Americans even know? This is SenseTalking, and on this explainer, the crooks should be jailed and the loopholes closed. We're diving into a massive story of alleged fraud coming out of Minnesota, a story that is absolutely exploding online. The source material we're looking at today claims it's exposing schemes that just demand accountability. So let's break this down. So where did all this come from? Well, this whole firestorm really ignited because of one independent investigation posted to YouTube. And it just took off, racking up over 100 million views across social media. It clearly tapped into a nerve, showing people what was happening on the ground, things that, apparently, reporters and officials had been missing for years.
And this quote from that source video, man, it perfectly captures the feeling behind why this went so viral. It suggests that the story resonated because it confirmed this deep-seated fear a lot of people have, that their hard-earned tax dollars are just vanishing into a system that's broken, or worse, corrupt.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the viral video that started it all. Then, we're going to unpack the specific schemes that are being alleged. After that, we'll follow the trail of red flags that were apparently missed, get into the accusations of negligence against state leadership, and finally, look at the political fallout. Okay, so let's start with how this whole thing blew up. It really all comes down to a YouTuber named Nick Shirley. He did something that seems, well, blindingly obvious now. He actually went to the childcare facilities that were supposedly getting millions and millions in government funding. And what he found was, honestly, it was jaw-dropping. His videos show these places were just completely empty. In some spots, people got really hostile when he showed up with a camera. None of them looked like they were actually caring for the huge numbers of kids they were billing for. It just painted this picture of absolutely zero oversight. And if you need one single image to sum up just how brazen this alleged fraud was, this is it. A sign for a learning center with the word learning spelled wrong. For so many people, this became the symbol of the whole thing. A scheme so blatant, so unsophisticated, you have to wonder, how was this not caught sooner? Okay, so now let's dig into the actual schemes, because the source video makes it very clear this goes way beyond a few sketchy daycares. It lays out multiple massive fraud operations that allegedly siphoned off billions of taxpayer dollars. First up, you've got the Feeding Our Future scandal. According to the Department of Justice, this was a staggering $250 million scheme. Defendants claimed they served millions of meals to kids, but that money, prosecutors say, didn't go to food. It went to luxury cars, real estate, and fancy trips. Then there's the autism services fraud. In this case, a company billed the state for $14 million for therapy, but the DOJ alleges that the company just hired unqualified relatives to provide the services and even paid parents kickbacks to get their kids into the program. And this right here, this just shows you how shockingly simple some of these alleged scams were. The source highlights a restaurant that claimed to be serving 18,000 meals a day. A quick peek inside would have told you it only had 35 seats. The math just doesn't work. It's a physical impossibility. So this brings us to the question that's at the heart of all the public outrage. Could this have been stopped sooner? The source material we're looking at argues emphatically yes. It claims the warning signs were there for years, just waiting for someone to pay attention. I mean, look at this timeline. This wasn't some new problem that just popped up overnight. The source points out that way back in 2015, the FBI raided one of these exact locations. By 2018, a local news investigation was literally calling daycare fraud an open secret. The warnings were loud and clear long before the main charges were filed in 2022. And the thing is, this information wasn't buried in some secret file. It was all right there in public records. The source notes that the now infamous Quality Learning Center had been investigated 13 times for serious violations, including unsafe conditions for kids and even failing to report a serious injury. It was all out in the open. And all of this, all these missed warnings, it leads directly to the central conflict presented in the source video. It's the accusation that Minnesota's state government, and specifically Governor Tim Walz, failed to act on these repeated, blatant red flags. You know, here's Governor Tim Walz, in a clip featured in the source, talking about the importance of leadership. He says that leaders don't blame others, they do the work. But the source then contrasts that statement with this list, a list of all the times it alleges the governor's office was warned. We're talking official letters from legislative committees, years of news reports, public data, whistleblowers, you name it. This leads the source to frame the situation as the governor being either, and these are its words, incompetent or complicit. So, what's the real-world damage from all this? The source details some pretty severe financial and political consequences for the state of Minnesota, and it's shaking both its budget and the public's trust.
Just look at these numbers for a second. It is an absolutely staggering turnaround. The source highlights that an enormous $18 billion state surplus has completely vanished, and now Minnesota is projected to be facing a nearly $3 billion deficit. The video draws a direct line from that collapse to the sheer scale of this fraud. And the fallout is already happening. We're talking real consequences. The Small Business Administration has already hit the brakes on millions in funding. A U.S. representative has, pretty ironically, proposed something called the Walz Act to crack down on this kind of fraud. And, as the source points out, prediction markets are even giving high odds that the governor himself could end up facing charges.
One of the biggest takeaways from the source material is really its commentary on the media landscape today. It argues that a single YouTuber with a very small budget did the kind of real, on-the-ground investigative work that huge media companies and government agencies just didn't. And in doing so, exposed this whole thing to millions of people. Which leaves us with the final, lingering question that the source poses. Now that this is all out in the open, Americans are watching. Will there be real accountability for everyone involved, from the bottom all the way to the top? Or, as so many people seem to fear, will this just be another story that eventually fades away with no real consequences?